Hey, how's it going? Today I'm going to show you how to create something like this. Look at that. So I'm going to show you how to create this water simulation where it actually fills up the glass a little bit, it comes pouring out, and it looks really nice. I'm going to preface this tutorial by saying that this is not a replacement for a Liquid Sim third-party software like Xparticle or something like that. But this might be enough to get the job done, or you could use it stylistically. But it's just kind of a cool thing that you can do just using stuff inside of R20. No third-party plugins, just the volume mesher and an emitter. We're going to take a look at how to do this. All right, let's go. We're going to start with a new scene. We're going to set the project to 24 frames per second. I like to do that over 30 just because it's 6 less frames per second to do, and it has a filmic look. So it just makes it render a little faster is the main reason I do it. But now that we've got that started, let's get into it. So we're going to need to create a cyc wall, which is easy enough. Let's just, I always like to add 4,000, boom, boom, boom. Let's do 10 segments. Make it editable. You can click up here or you can hit C on the keyboard. And then we're going to go into our little segments options here. We're going to just control, click, and drag this out at an angle. And then we're going to drag it up, and we're going to try to keep it about the same distance as these guys. And we're just going to try to build that up just a little bit more. You can be a little more accurate about this, but it's not really going to matter. Let's pull that up a little bit more. Okay. So now we've got that. And so if you hold Alt while you have this selected over here, you can bloop, drop into Subdivide. And there you go. You've got yourself a nice little smooth cyc wall. We'll hit T, and we'll scale that out a little bit. And now we've got an infinite floor. So we're going to... I use Redshift, but you can use whatever render you want for this tutorial. But I'm going to go ahead and just throw a texture on here. And we're going to take the shine off of it for now. And make it white for fun. Never go full white. Just never do. Okay. So we've got that. Okay, so we've got that going. We can name that if you want. You can hit enter up here, and we're going to say... psych. I know it's got a P, but I think psych is actually CYC. We're gonna call that psych, and that's fine how it is. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna need for this is you're gonna go over here to simulate. You're gonna go to particles and grab an emitter. It's gonna spawn this little dude right here, this little square. We're gonna hide this for now, just to get this out of the way. Oops. Hold Alt and click that twice, and that'll turn that off. Put that back on, that's fine. Hit R to rotate. We're going to pull this up to about 90 degrees, and then we're going to hold Shift to rotate at 60 degrees. We'll have to adjust this later, but just make sure it's above the floor plane for now. Bring it down a bit. So for the emitter, for the settings, we're going to do a cone emitter. We're going to make it 150 by 150. Pulls, we're going to do 2,000 and 2,000. Now, if your computer's a little slower, you can lower the number here to get started, but we're going to go with show object and render instance. Render instance is important. We're going to go ahead and make this a little bit longer, about 300. Drag this out, and then we're going to make this lifetime 800. And for the speed, we are going to want this to be 2,000. You'll see why here in a bit. We can put a little variation on it just to change it up a little bit. But that is basically it for the render, for the emitter, I mean. So the emitter, if you hit play, obviously it's just going to shoot out a bunch of little lines. So what we need is something to emit. So we're going to grab a sphere. We're going to plop that underneath the emitter there. We're going to change the sphere's radius to 15 centimeters. We're going to make the segments 12. The reason we're making the segments 12 is because what we're going to do is use the volume mesher to put it all together. So it doesn't need to be a very high poly sphere, and also the lower the segments, the faster it will be able to render your emitter and stuff. So, okay, so now we can hit play, and you'll see, pew, shoots out a bunch of balls. Pretty cool. So the next step, we're going to go ahead and go to our emitter, and we're going to switch this birth rate editor. So what that's going to do is it's actually going to show in the viewport here. Whoops, if I add 2,000, back it up. It's going to show actually what it's going to emit, so what you'll see in the render. Okay, so now we need a tube, like we have a little faucet coming out into our glass. So for our tube, we're going to select a tube. And we're going to want this to be 150 inner and 200 outer. And so that controls the inside and the outside radius. So it's got a pretty big opening. And we're going to want it to have 2 caps. We're going to want it to have about 45 rotational segments. So we're going to set the height of this tube to about 1680. Just, you know, around there. It's nice long tube. Because what we're going to do is we're going to need to bend it. So to bend it, we need to add a bunch of height segments. Let's say about 28 will work. So the reason I have so many rotational segments and height segments is, 1, we're going to bend it, but 2, the more segments you have, the better it works with dynamics, which is what we're going to use to make this emitter, these little spheres, follow down the tube. So what you're going to want to do is add this bend modifier. To add a modifier to your object that you have selected, you're going to hold shift and click it. Boom, and that puts it underneath it automatically. And we're going to click fit to parent. We're going to switch this to unlimited, and we are going to change this to -30. And there you go. You got a bent tube. We might want to bend that a little bit more. Let's bend that about like that. Let's go -90. We're going to rotate that around, hold shift to rotate it 180 degrees. So we're going to pull this up a bit, because we're going to have a glass here to pour into. So we're going to take our emitter, grab the emitter, and we're going to pull that up here. And we're actually going to slide it into the tube a bit. We're just going to make sure it's kind of in there a little bit, but not aiming really. You want to kind of aim it just kind of down the tube. So it's going to, the spheres are going to hit this tube wall and roll down. That's the idea we're going for, like it's water coming through a pipe. So if we hit play now, woof, you see the first couple frames are kind of funky. But then you start getting this nice water pour. So all that means is that our spheres are kind of bouncing around way too much. So we need to go into our bounce and actually lower this down. For our dynamics, we're going to want this to be at about 15. And then the friction we actually want to keep at 20. And the collision noise we want to take down. That's kind of what's causing, because there's so many spheres coming out of the emitter at once that they're kind of hitting each other all at once and bouncing off too erratically. So they're kind of spraying out of the tube. So now when we hit play, you see it doesn't just spray out balls everywhere. And it's just going to come pouring out. Blue, look at that. Comes pouring out of that tube. Which is pretty cool. Very cool. Okay. So now that is set up. Let's get the tube's friction settings right and lower, because we don't really need it to bounce off, in 60. And that's just going to kind of let it slide down the pipe and kind of clump up a little bit together, so the spheres kind of grab a hold of and kind of just really, instead of just bouncing all around in here, they're going to kind of want to slide down and come out. So we need to make our glass. And so to do this, what I'm going to do is use the pin tool. I'm going to click the middle mouse button. I'm going to go to the front view here, middle mouse button. Oops, I clicked. Undo that. And we're going to hide this real quick. If I hold Alt and Control and click this, it'll do the parent and the child at the same time. And then we'll select all 4 of those. We'll just hide that for now. So if this is the middle, and this is going to be the ground, so we think a glass, set this kind of here. We'll go over to about here, and we'll go up. We'll kind of hold in, and that's going to give it this little curve. And that might be a little much, so let's grab this tool. And we'll zoom in, make sure you're on the vertex. And we're going to just pull that in a little bit like that. This is a little dramatic, so let's do that. Maybe just a little like, yeah, let's bring this outside. Yeah, sort of like that, but that's just the tiniest bit dramatic. Let's bring that in. There we go. So it just kind of has this curve to it. And this doesn't have a curve, so what we need to do to enable a curve on this is right click on that and say soft interpolation. And that's going to make this crazy big, so we'll hold shift to bring that side in, grab this, hold shift and bring that in. And we just want this bit to be level. We don't want the bottom to curve, but having a little curve there is alright. So we're going to design half the glass here. And once again, I'm going to bring this out and this over. I just want to kind of get a little wider as it goes out. Yeah. So now what we're going to do is while we have this selected, we're going to hold this down. We're going to hold Alt and hit Lathe. And that's going to put that spline inside this lathe. And what that's going to do is, if you get out of this front view, you can kind of see what's going on here. It's made a circle from that. So it just takes your spline, wraps it all the way around, and does it around the center. So the first thing you really want to do is just kind of, double check that you like the way this looks. I think this is way too fat and short, so we're going to bring this in. Let me zoom out so I can see my faucet. Okay. So let's bring both of these way up here. I think it's too small. So bring it up to here. We'll grab this guy and we'll pull him over. And there we go. And now we're going to mess with the interpolation of this. Grab your handle. Kind of bring this guy. Oops. Make sure you have just this selected. Grab your handle. Just kind of pull. Get that right. And then hold shift and just pull that out a little bit. There we go. And I've got kind of a nice glass. It might be a little fat still, so let's bring all these in. There we go. We're getting there. Grab this guys. I'm just not. We get there. Fiddle around with it. Let me pull this up a bit, down a bit. Ooh, yeah, down a bit. Actually, get that point in the glass like that. Okay. So now that we've got that and this, we can go into type, quadrilaterals under the caps, and do a regular grid, which I don't think is going to do anything because we don't have our caps in there actually. But we're going to up the subdivisions to like 32. And what we're going to actually want to do is hit C. And that's going to make this one object. And now we're going to go to simulate cloth surface. And we're going to put that inside of there. And what that's going to do is it's going to add just some extra geometry to it. And that's going to really help with the dynamics. And also what we can do there is, boom, instantly add some thickness to the glass. So you can see, you can crank that up. You can make the glass kind of thick. So if we take this out of this mode and we go into, say, this mode, you can tell that the glass actually has some thickness to it. Pretty easy way to do that. So we're going to hit C, and just to make sure, we're going to hit Control A while you have the vertex selected on this object here. And we're going to right click and we're going to say Optimize. And that's just going to make sure that there's not like 50 points where there should just be 1 point, and make sure they're all kind of together good there. So now we've got that. We actually don't need this. This is not doing anything. So we've got this, and we're going to take our tube dynamics. We're actually just going to hold Control and drag that down to the lathe here. And now the beads should interact with this, and having the higher res is going to help the dynamics work, but also having the thickness there will help a lot, because when you have like a thin object like a plane or something, you really lose that. The dynamics really they'll like fly through it sometimes and stuff, so it can kind of mess that up. So we're actually just going to take our birth rate down to like 400 just to make sure this runs smoother. And we're going to take a look and make sure that it's not flying through the bottom completely. It is a little bit, because this needs to be raised up. Actually be on the ground here. So one good tip to make sure things are actually flush on the ground, grab this and bring it down in the front view right above that plane. That's going to be close enough that no one will know that it's not completely flush, but let's take a look here. I'm not super happy with that glass, but it will work. I don't think I like this lip. But yeah, let's take a look. So yeah, we've got very few particles coming through the bottom, which means that they should be going into the cup. Yeah, look at that. It's actually filling up the cup. So now we have that going. We can bake this out. Now for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to shorten the, I think I'm going to actually shorten this down to, let's do 24 times 5 seconds long, right? 120 frames. So let's see how much that gives us. Hit play, let that keep going. So the reason I did 24 is because I did 24 frames a second. 24 times the seconds will give you the amount of frames you need for the seconds. It's really a really nice feature of Cinema 4D. So there we go. Okay. So that is, remember, that's only 500 of the 400 of the 2000 that's actually gonna be coming through. So I think that's gonna get us some nice results actually. Wild. I like to pause it while I rotate around. Just kind of helps it run better. I've got an old CPU, which is what's going to determine how well your simulation does rather than your GPU or anything. So there we go. We're definitely going to fill up a little bit here. That's awesome. Okay. So now what we need to do is, bake this. So to bake this, we're going to go select this sphere, dynamic tag, we're going to go over to cache, and we're going to say bake all. We're going to let that load up, and you can get yourself a coffee or something. Really appreciate it if you checked out my Effectatron Twitch channel. It's effect_a_tron. And sometimes I live stream some tutorials and stuff like that. But I also live stream some games and stuff I play with my buddies. But it's just a fun time to come hang out and chat. I'd love to hear from you and get to talk to you. Okay. I should explain baking. Baking is basically instead of having it calculate every single time from frame 0 to the next frame to the next frame, it just does it. Or like anytime you go back and hit play, or anytime you change anything, it's like live dynamics. So you could like move the cup around and it would react to it. But what baking does is once you have everything the way you want it, you bake it, and it's like calculate all of that one time, and then from then on out, just use whatever those results were no matter what. So if I move the cup around and stuff, the balls aren't going to be affected by that cup in a different way. They're going to do the exact same pattern. It's like baking the animation into the sequence. So there you go. Okay, so the good thing about baking is now we can just click, and we can see where they are. You don't have to go back to 0 and hit play every time now. So we've got some balls spilling out the side, but that's okay. We can clean those up. They probably will actually go away when we render this out. But the good thing is we've got this, and let's take out the line view. Yeah, we've got this filling up. That's exactly what we want. Awesome. Okay, so now that we know that that ended up looking right, now we can do something a little extra, which is going to be to take this emitter, right click it, and do bake as Alembic. And that's just going to it's kind of a next level bake. You could have done that from the get-go, but if it takes a little longer, and if there was something wrong after we baked it the first time, like it would have been just harder to fix afterwards, but just because it takes longer. So basically an Alembic bake is, it bakes it as a mesh rather than like the calculations. There's not going to be any calculations stored or anything. It's basically like point animation saved, like the geometry is animated that way. So it's pretty awesome new feature of R20. So we're going to let that go. We have our Alembic baked right here. You can see this is the emitter geometry with these little Alembic tags. We can actually turn all of this off. Hide that, leave the cyc and the tube. But now we have our geometry is baked as one solid object. So it's not calculating anything or anything like that. So now what we can do is go over here to volume builder, grab our emitter geo, throw it in there. Let it think for a second. See down here it says calculating. So now you can see we have these like weird little voxely looking things. So what we're going to want to do is leave it in sign distance field and don't switch it to fog. We're going to change our voxel size to 25. And let that calculate. There you go. So you can already start to see kind of the effect we're getting from this. So just already kind of looks like a solid shape rather than a bunch of little spheres. So we're getting there, but it looks kind of Minecrafty right now. So what we're going to want to do is add the smooth layer. In our smooth layer settings, we are going to switch this to mean curvature. Oh yeah, now you're starting to see it. And iterations of 2. Let's see, what did I do here? Yeah, 2 iterations. And we're actually going to take this strength down to about 14%. So we still have some little splashes and stuff coming out here. There we go. So you see we've kind of got liquid in our cup. Yeah. So now, since we have volume builder, we want to go to volume and now do volume mesher. Grab this volume builder, put it in the volume mesher. Oh, now you're starting to see. Here we go. So we're going to take this and we're going to set it up to about 65. And that's just going to kind of bring some of that back out. Now we've got some of this going on up here, so I'm actually going to lower this down until, well, we'll just leave that there actually. We're actually going to want to go into our volume builder. We're just going to try to take this up a little bit more until we kind of get rid of those little speckles. There we go. Okay, so we're losing the speckles now, but we still got liquid down here. Perfect. So what do we end up with that? About 40. Okay. So now we got our volume mesher. We can turn this back up a little bit. 65, kind of bring some of that volume back up. Yeah, we go. Right about there, but as much as we can without bringing those speckles back. Yep, and that's fine because we're going to cut that out of the frame. Anyway, like this. So now, what you can do is you can render that out if you want, or if you want to make it just a little bit faster, you can bake that as Alembic. We'll do the same thing. Actually, we do want to do that, so we're going to right click this and we're going to go bake as Lymbic. Let's bake that down into a volume mesher here so we can turn all of this stuff off. And what we've got here is a rendered out volume. So if we look at it with the lines on, you see it's got some geometry, but we can actually now smooth this out. We're going to hold Alt and hit Subdivide, and that's just going to smooth that out even more and just kind of take away any of those rough edges. We can do 3 in the editor or not, but we really just leave it at 2. We'll just leave that. Okay. So there you go. You can see that's going to just smooth that out a little bit. And so now we can texture it. But no matter what you do, whatever the render you're using or anything, you're just going to want to put a glass-like texture, water texture on this, glass texture on that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to texture this with Redshift. But if you're not using Redshift, the end result is the video you saw at the beginning of this. So yeah, there you go. But for all you Redshift users, I'll show you how to set up my lighting and everything for this. So first we're going to start off with a Redshift tool, lights, and then dome light. And we're going to grab an HDR. I have the Grayscale Gorilla HDRI pack. And you can use that, or you can go to HDR Haven or something like that and get an HDR. And that, oops, I didn't mean to do that, but that's fine. So now we've got that. If we pop this up, you'll see we have no textures on anything but the cyc, so it's going to look kind of silly right now. Okay, so that dome light is just going to serve to add some reflections to fill in the gaps when we have in the glass and stuff like that. So next we're going to do lights. We're going to go with an area light. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to zoom out. We're going to grab this, pull this up. We're going to rotate this 90 degrees, and then we're going to grab this and we're going to just scale it up a bit. like that. You want a big, nice, wide, diffuse light, and that's just gonna let this just really a nice overhead softbox light for that. Basically, if it was a studio, it'd be a big chain of lights, and this would be called a silk, and it just provides a really nice soft light. And we're gonna hold Control and drag that over and copy it, and we're gonna make it smaller, rotate it about 80 degrees. We're going to make sure that's beside the light here. We're going to hit W to have it move on world space. Hold Control, drag that over here, rotate this around 180 degrees, pull it down about 20 to compensate, and then we're actually going to stretch this one out wider as well and back it up just a little bit. We're going to want this to be, we're going to move it forward a bit and rotate it a little bit in towards it, so it's going to kind of look at it there, and that's just going to provide a nice softbox. So you got softbox, 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 harder light, and on this light we're actually going to take the spread of it and turn it down a bit because we just want it to be not such a, this needs to be kind of a sharper light. Okay, so we've got this. We're going to take this light here. We're actually going to copy that and bring it back over here. We're going to stretch it out and bring it thin and tilt it towards the cyc. So this is just going to be kind of our light that's going to just even out the cyc wall lighting for us. We're actually going to turn that down just a little bit, about 0.5. And then we'll take this light, we'll move it forward just a bit. We want this highlight right there. That's nice. Okay. We'll fix the camera angle here in a bit, but first let's go to the glass texture. So we can go create, Redshift material, double click that, and then we're going to go preset, and we're going to go with glass. And for that, we're actually just going to take this IOR and just turn it up to like 1.52. It's just going to make it a little more distortion in there. So we've got that. And we're going to throw that on our water. You can just drop it on because now it's just a mesh here. So that's fantastically easy. We're going to go to, we'll just hold Control here, drag it out. This is going to be our glass. Double click that, pull that up. We're going to make this a little less. So we're going to say 1.44. And that's going to distort it more, so we want 1.68, like that. Yeah, well, you know what? Let's do 1.3. Yeah, 1.3. And we're going to grab that and put that on our glass. And then we're going to go to create, Redshift material. Bloop. And for this, we're going to just go with silver. That looks pretty good. We'll throw that on here. And then we will take this light and rotate it just a bit. It's just giving us a hard line there. There we go. So now we're going to go Redshift camera. Standard camera. We're going to click this icon to view through the camera. We're going to set this to a 50mm lens, which is just a nice lens for this kind of photography. We actually could do an 85, probably be even better. And zoom out. That's just going to give you less lens distortion the longer the focal length. And we can still see we've got a little bit right there, so we're going to take that light and just back it up just a bit. So you got to click off of here. And then we're just going to grab that and pull it a little bit back and rotate it just a bit more. We can go back to our camera by clicking that. And there we go. So now if we hit our render settings, we're going to keep this in Redshift. We're going to turn that off. We're going to go to Redshift. We're going to turn on GI. We're going to go brute force and brute force. For now, we're just going to leave all the settings how they are just to get a preview of what this is going to look like. So we'll go to our Redshift Render view, hit render, which IPR here. And voila. Now I think I made my glass a little too thin on the IOR, so we're going to actually go into that one. And we're going to put this back up. We're going to go 1.68. should just make it look a little thicker. There we go. Okay, so this light we're gonna take, yep, and we're gonna make this just have a little bluish hue to it, just the tiniest bit of blue. And this other light over here, this first one we made, not the overhead one, but the one on the right, we're gonna add just a little bit of orange to that, just the tiniest bit. That's really just gonna help add a little extra contrast. And if you don't think our glass here is really thick enough, we can actually do a cloth simulation again on it, cloth surface. So I'm not really happy with the way that turned out. And let's just add some more thickness to it. Yeah. That's good. I like that. Here we go. So we've added some little extra thickness to that. Now, one thing I don't like is this white silk with this. Because what's cool about water and stuff is you see through it and you see the reflections and things, and that's cool. So for this cyc, I actually want it to be black. And it can have a little reflection to it. So we'll turn that up. We're actually just going to add a noise to this real quick. And a bump map. If I can spell. Bump map. Noise goes into the bump. Oops, I said a blender. Bump map. Noise goes into the texture input. From the bump map, it goes to Redshift. Redshift to overall. Bump input. We'll see what this looks like. So we'll plug this back into there. And we will take a look and see what that looks like. Yeah, so what that has done is it's kind of just helped the water and stuff, the reflections and things just really pop out. So now we can tell we need a little bit more light from that very first light. We're actually going to turn this up to about 5. There we go. And oops. We're going to take this material that we just made, and we're going to turn the roughness up, the reflection down a bit. There we go. Just kind of make that smoother. Yeah. So one thing you could do with this to make it just kind of pop just a little bit more is add one more light. Light. We're going to do an area light. And we are going to move this up here. Oops, not the cyc. Area light. We're going to move this up here. We're going to rotate it. And it's just going to serve as a backlight, just to kind of extra highlight this water and kind of back illuminate it a little bit. And we don't need it to spread that much, so we're going to intensify that down. It's basically the way spread works. It's basically like putting barn doors on it if it was in a studio. And I forgot to take off my camera view, so reset our camera. Render view, play. So now you've got this little highlight here. It's a little too sharp. Let's crank it back up. I like the highlights that it puts on the glass, but we might need to scoot it back just a bit. So we'll swap to our top view. And we'll scoot it back just a bit. Go back to here. Yeah. Let's just do the water material on the glass as well. Let's just do them the same. I think that's going to look better. Very cool. So now if you can imagine what this will look like. That was weird. Pop that back on there. No? Oh, I was putting it on the cloth surface instead. Let's turn my cloth surface back down to like 0.25. So if we look here, I think some of the liquid is trying to escape. So what we're actually going to do is grab this lathe and just scale it up ever so slightly, just to make sure that it's outside the water. There we go. Now we'll zoom back here like this. Make sure we cut out the little blob up there. Blah, 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 blah. There we go. So if you notice in this one, there's not as many sprays and things as I had on my Instagram one or in the photo, but actually all that is when you're going through the volume builder, it's just getting the smoothing setting right, basically. And then if you're having issues like I had up here at the beginning with stuff spraying out the back, one thing you can do is lower your numbers a little bit, but also you can like make your tube bigger, because scale is actually really important in this. And you can also just kind of tweak the way that your emitter is setting. But the general idea is basically you, step one, get your emitter with little spheres going and get it with dynamic objects the way you want it. Then you're going to bake that alembically. Then you're going to put that in a volume builder and then a volume mesher. Then you're going to bake that, and then you can light it and texture it. And that is how you can do it. Now, it's definitely not a replacement for like a liquid sim or something, but if you want to do something like with an emitter where you made like a spiral or a whirlwind and then you did the same effect, you could make like it look like a little liquid tornado. Like if you had a product here, like a Coke can or something, you wanted the liquid to be swirling around it, you could use an emitter and this to do that. And it would kind of give you a nice natural look. So it's pretty cool for volume. It's just a neat way to use that. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other tutorials and follow me on Instagram, Twitch. I do some tutorials and streaming there as well as play games and stuff. But my Instagram is pretty much just stuff I make for fun. And then be sure to subscribe on YouTube. I also have a Facebook and stuff if you want to hang out there. It's really just a clone of my Instagram though. So be sure to check me out on that. All right. Thanks. Leave a like if you enjoyed this or if it was helpful. And please comment on anything you have questions about or would just like to discuss. I always love hearing from you guys. Thank you guys for all your support. I really enjoy doing this, and you guys make it fun. Hopefully it helps you out. All right, have a good one. See ya.